Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the GTX 1080 Founders Edition, and the model that I got is an EVGA model of the Founders Edition card, but as you guys probably know, Founders Edition cards are basically reference graphics cards, so it doesn't really matter which one of the board vendors you get it from, whether it be EVGA, ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte, Zotac, PNY. The Founders cards or the reference cards like this 980 Ti right here are all the same. So this 980 Ti right here is actually a Gigabyte, but it looks the exact same as all the other reference cards from the different board manufacturers back on the 980 Ti, and that's continued here into the 1080. They've just changed the name to the Founders Edition, and some of you guys I'm sure already know that by now, so we're just reiterating things here. But I'm a big fan of this style of cooler. I like the blower style cooler because I traditionally run SLI, and I also use a Define R5 case, which is quite closed up. It doesn't have the most amazing airflow in the world, so having this blower style cooler on here that helps push the hot air out the back of the case rather than circulating around the inside of the case usually helps me out a lot inside the particular case that I'm using, as well as when I am running an SLI configuration, which is something I am planning to do down the road now with the GTX 1080. So for my testing, I'm using my main system here inside the Fractal Design Define R5 with the side panel on, so this isn't like an open air test bed or anything like that. I think this is a little bit more realistic to what some of you guys out there may actually be running. I'm only using 3 case fans on here, 2 in the front and 1 in the back, and then I've also got a single fan air cooler, the Be Quiet Dark Rock 3, and that's on my i7-5820K, which I have overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz, and that's running in here with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, which is overclocked to 2133 megahertz. One of the first things I did when I got the 1080 into my system was go ahead and launch GPU-Z because I wanted to check the ASIC quality score, and my 1080 actually got an astounding 98.5% ASIC quality score, which is just insane. The 980 Ti, which I was testing it against, had 74.5%, and that was the better of my two 980 Ti's that I had. The other one was a 69%. So this is the highest that I've seen by a really, really big margin. I don't think I've ever seen anyone out there actually say they got a 98% ASIC score. If you guys have ever had a score that high, let me know in the comments below, because I'm genuinely curious, because I didn't even think that could happen. I thought it was like unicorns. You just hear about it and you never see it. So with the ASIC score as high as it was, I definitely wanted to overclock this card and see how high we could get it. So I was actually able to get an additional 250 megahertz on the core and 400 on the memory, and with boost accounted for and all that, it brought the core clock up to around 2050 megahertz, which is what it stayed at stably the majority of the time, even during long endurance stress testing, which I'm going to touch on in just a moment there with really long gaming sessions. And then on the memory, like I said, I was able to get it up 400 megahertz, which brought it up to 5454, which is effectively 10,908 megahertz on the memory. So absolutely insane overclock there on the GTX 1080. And the 980 Ti, which I tested it against later on, I did have an overclock on that as well. Both of these cards were overclocked in all of the testing, and the 980 Ti was able to get an additional 250 on the core as well, but 300 on the memory, which brought it up to 1414 on the core and 3802 on the memory, which is effectively double that. Now, it's one thing to be able to get the GTX 1080 over 2 gigahertz and running stably on the core there, but it's another thing entirely to be able to get it to sustain over an extended period of time. And with a lot of the reports coming in from other reviewers on thermal throttling with the Founders Edition cards and having the temperatures at around 82, 83 degrees and having that affect their boost and overclocks, I was definitely concerned about it going into this graphics card. So in order to test that out to see if I could maintain the 2 gigahertz overclock that I had, I went and booted up the Unigine Valley benchmark at 1440p, and I just let that thing run free for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I did that on the 980 Ti as well as the 1080 with the side panel on the case, so I could test out the temperatures and the noise levels. So on the 1080, I was able to keep it at under 75 degrees for the entire duration of the testing. 75 was the max, but for the most part, it sat at 74 degrees for the whole period of testing, and I didn't see my core clock really waver off of 2050 very much at all. Sometimes it would do kind of like a core clock, like a little wobble down to like 2025, but it wasn't like a massive dip that it happened over a long period of time or anything like that. It was just like a little tiny fluctuation. And I didn't have any massive dips or anything like that on the 980 Ti either, which was running actually hotter. It was running at around 79 degrees on the 980 Ti, and that was able to maintain its overclock as well. So neither one of these cards hit the thermal throttling threshold of around 83 degrees Celsius inside the Define R5 case, and so I didn't experience any of that here with my testing. So I don't have anything negative to report on as far as the thermals are concerned on this particular graphics card. I was using a custom fan curve for this. It's the same exact fan curve that I've been using on my 980 Ti's for about a year now, I guess, ever since the 980 Ti came out. And that kept my fan speed at around 74% when it was under full load. And yeah, I can kind of hear it, but it's with the side panel on and everything, it's really not that big of a deal, especially in the Define R5, which is meant to be a silent case. So it does not distract me in any way from using the case. From using this graphics card, and I'll let you guys give a listen to it here. So right now the GTX 1080 is running at 74 degrees Celsius and it's at 74% fan speed. All right, now I'll go ahead and take the case door off so you can get an idea of how it sounds if it's open with the door off. Still 74% fan speed. Removing the case door brought us down to 72 degrees Celsius and 72% fan speed within about 30 seconds of removing the case door. All right, so you guys got to listen there to the GTX 1080. Really not too bad at all, in my personal opinion. When I have the side panel on and I'm gaming, it's not loud enough to distract me while I'm actually gaming. I think that's really the concern a lot of people have of are they going to be able to hear it over their games? And for me, playing at like a medium volume, I can't hear it. If I'm wearing headphones, I definitely can't hear it unless I'm really sitting there looking for it. And setting idle to desktop, the fans are usually at around 40%, and that's basically inaudible to me at any listening volume unless I'm really searching for it. Okay, so we saw the overclocking, the noise levels, the temperatures, all of that stuff. I know you guys want to see the actual benchmarks, so we're going to jump into that right now with the rockin' benchmarks. But just to let you guys know, for the testing on these games, I was using no anti-aliasing and no GameWorks. Besides that, all other settings available in the games were turned up to their highest settings. If there was a graphical effect in there, it was turned on. Besides GameWorks, that is. No GameWorks, no anti-aliasing, and I wanted to just do that to sort of set a precedent to keep it consistent going forward in all of my testing. And I wanted to leave out GameWorks because when we test AMD cards in the future, I don't really think it's fair to test GameWorks on them. So I just want to keep it consistent going throughout all of the future testing here on the channel. So that's my reasoning there for that. If you guys are opposed to that in any way, you can leave your grievances in the comments below. Let me know why you would like to see me maybe do it differently, and I will take it under advisement. But without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off with the rockin' benchmarks. Okay, so compared to the GTX 980 Ti, the 1080 probably doesn't really look that impressive to a lot of you, and maybe doesn't justify the $700 price tag of the Founders Edition graphics card when compared to something like the 980 Ti that you could pick up now for about $450 used over on eBay. And that is definitely a valid argument for sure. And if you're out there running a 980 Ti, I can't really say that I would advise you to go ahead and sell it. For me, I'm pretty happy with the performance that I'm getting because it made a lot of the games that I was playing at 4K and not really able to maintain that solid 60 FPS that I wanted at ultra settings, I'm now able to do that because of the GTX 1080. It's only like another 10 FPS that you're seeing there, but in reality at 4K, an additional 10 FPS is quite a lot. When it's only getting about 40 FPS to begin with, getting that additional 10 FPS up to 50, that's a 25% boost in performance. That's a lot at 4K. That's massive. And that is the difference between taking a game that is maybe unplayable ultra, where you're going to have to choose to either lower the options to get 60 frames or play at a lower FPS, versus, okay, now I could just play it ultra with no compromises at 4K and I don't have to worry about lowering anything, and I'm going to get a smooth experience. And besides a few exceptions like Crysis 3 and The Division, and also I would add Witcher 3 to that as well, although it did get an average of 51, I was seeing a lot of frames down there into the low 40s, where I would probably look to tweak some of the settings there in that particular game. And then Division and Crysis 3 as well, those games did not run amazing at 4K ultra settings. I would have to tweak down some of the settings in those particular titles, or look at running a second GTX 1080, which is something I'm going to look at doing in the future. I want to get one in for more 4K testing, and I'm probably going to do another benchmarking video like this where I'm going to test ultra-wide resolutions, I think, on the 1080 versus the 980 Ti. I'm sure there are some people out there that would like to see that. Probably not as many as the rest of you, but I'm sure there are enough people out there that are interested in the ultra-wide stuff. So my final conclusion, and where I see the GTX 1080 kind of fitting in the marketplace right now, is it being a really great option as a single GPU solution for either 4K or 1440p at above 60 Hz. Like if you're getting a 144 or 165 Hz monitor from Acer or Asus, I think this is going to be an absolute beast card, even for 1440 well above 60 Hz. I was regularly seeing games massively above 60 FPS on this card. So if you were getting a 144 Hz 1440p display like the ones that I usually run, then you're going to see a big advantage from using a card like this, and even just at a single GPU solution, so you now don't need to really look at running SLI for that particular type of setup. And then for 4K as well, it kind of takes it to where now you no longer really need an SLI setup for 4K, because this card is enough to power games at a playable frame rate. For me at 4K, given that you do have a G-Sync monitor, I would say that add that as like an asterisk at the end of that, is that I consider having a G-Sync monitor imperative for playing games at 4K at this point, because a lot of the games, even the ones that can average over 60, you're going to see drops below 60, and for when that happens, you're going to want to have something like G-Sync there to get your back. So for 4K 60 FPS on a G-Sync monitor like the 1080 is just absolutely amazing. I couldn't ask for a better card right now at this time, apart from, well, the full-fat Pascal when that eventually comes out, if we were to get that now, but I know HBM is, being limited, so we just have the DDR5X right now. And there's one more thing that I'll touch on here is, being that this is the Founders card, it is limited with its maximum overclocking potential, and I can't help but wonder how much I could have gotten out of my overclock, given that I had that 98.5% ASIC score, if I was able to deliver more power to this card and wasn't limited by the single 8-pin power connector. I'm really hoping that we can get one of the board partners' custom PCB cards in on the channel to test in the future, like Gigabyte or Asus or EVGA, MSI, whoever. All of these guys have, custom boards coming out with multiple 8-pin power connectors, or 8 and 6-pin power connectors too, I believe. So I really want to get one of those in on the channel, definitely to compare it against this card. Given that I got the high ASIC score, see how much performance I'm missing out on just because I couldn't get additional power delivery. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will catch you next time.